as you rightly said, the role is to support.
Yes, not to take over.
And not to take over.
In fact, some mother-in-laws, they want to connive with their daughters to extort.
My God.
As long as the daughter finds them supportive. If they are not supportive, let them be shipped back ASAP. Of course, there will be a lot of dialogue. How could you do this? You know, I'm your mother. I brought you into this world. I was pregnant for 9 months. There's an expectation that the wife must, not even should, must be able to cook. And must be able to cook to feed her husband. So if the husband is the one that's cooking and the mother-in-law comes to your house and sees 40 girls who said, no, don't worry about my family. It's just me and you, baby. I say, take your Gucci shoe and run.
Yewande.
BabaShola, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from.
Yes.
We're really getting this part of the world is beginning. The weather is beginning to change. We always say British people, we're always talking about the weather. So please excuse us.
Yes.
It's been the summer. Now we're moving into, is it autumn?
Yeah, autumn.
Autumn.
But that's life though.
Yes.
We live in
seasons. We do live in seasons.
We live in seasons.
Yes.
And you have to adapt.
Yes.
And for those that are in a relationship that is hectic, or a relationship that is, that you're not finding enjoyable, you dreamt of having this relationship, you had so much hope about it. Don't give up. We are speaking from our life
exactly, and everything is possible in terms of changing that situation around.
Yeah.
We're both in very happy relationships.
Yes.
Not always have been the case. So we're hoping you'll learn from some of our previous experiences.
Definitely.
And examine and reflect on yours and see whether there's any areas you can start making changes now before you get into a rut.
And just take each day as it comes. Don't let it overwhelm you. That's the point of our podcast, matters of the heart. So many issues that we've been discussing, go through a catalog of videos, and I'm sure that you'll be,
yeah, there'll be
uplifted.
something that you uplifted. Yes.
I was just about to say you'll be blessed. But you'll be blessed as well.
Why?
You'll be blessed. You'll be blessed as well.
Blessed now. Why not? And highly favored. So what's our hot topic today?
The role of mother-in-law in a new marriage. No mother-in-law jokes.
Okay. Yeah. The role of a mother-in-law, full stop. Whether it's new marriage, old marriage.
Okay. So
the role of a mother-in-law.
The role of a mother-in-law in a relationship.
In a relationship, yes. And a mother-in-law, if you have a mother-in-law, it means that you have already made a commitment to a marriage to somebody, because also we can't assume people know that a mother-in-law is somebody that by marriage is how you usually acquire one. Although some people, they've had children and they have a mother-in-law, but the term is usually in a committed marriage, that kind of scenario.
I was just about to say that. Again, mother-in-law for real, a mother-in-law in inverted comma, mother-in-law, potential mother-in-law. There are some relationships that are developing into a serious relationship.
Yes.
So one has to view the mother of the partner as a future mother-in-law.
Yes. So if you're engaged or you're in a relationship, we have to make sure we do one on father-in-laws too at some point. But today is mother-in-law. Yes.
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law. Everyone has a role to play.
Definitely, I agree.
Yes. I mean, what's been your experience of in-laws, mother-in-law in particular? I mean, you have a mother-in-law at the moment, right?
No.
Okay.
She's sadly passed on.
Okay.
But she was wonderful.
Okay.
And I remember telling my wife that just meeting her for the first time made me realize that I'd made the right choice.
Wow, that's interesting. And I'll tell you why that's really important. I don't know if you remember, we spoke about before you get into a serious relationship, you need to kind of spend time with the extended family of that person.
Go on a tour.
Go on a tour together.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that might be drastic to start with, but maybe just getting to know more about the potential family you're going to be married into. And I myself believe that those things are important because marriage is a long-term commitment, and that person cannot divorce themselves from their mother. So your wife cannot divorce herself from her mother. So whether you like her mother or not, she's going to be part and parcel of your relationship.
I'm good.
Similarly, I hear people say things like, "Oh, my mother-in-law from hell." That's if you're already feeling that way.
Declaration is done.
Yes, but people say that like you said, no mother-in-law jokes, but that's a classic one. Mother-in-law from hell. But it doesn't necessarily have to be so. And this is why we're talking about it. Some of us are already in relationships. Maybe we didn't even think about those things when we got married to start with. We were just in love with our partner. We just think our love will conquer all. At least that was my situation. So I'm speaking from experience. And my mother-in-law, my current mother-in-law is absolutely fantastic. She's somebody that, she's not based in the UK. She's based in Ghana because my husband is Ghanaian. And I remember after experiencing relationship with my first mother-in-law, I said, the second time around, I need to do things a bit differently. And so what I did, I went to the village in Ghana, somewhere in the upper eastern region, with a friend of mine that's was Ghanaian for language barriers. I didn't even bother trying to get my husband to introduce me. I went, I got the details from my sister-in-law, and I said, no, I have to make a trip up there before we marry, because I needed to know, even though we were grown-up people, I needed to know what his background is, where he's coming from, and he still has a mother. So mother-in-laws, just treat them like your mother. That's the first thing I would say, because whatever you can do for your mother, you should be able to do for your mother-in-law. So I went with my friend who is Ghanaian for language reasons, and it wasn't an easy journey, BabaShola, but it was worth it because it set the foundation to the kind of relationship I still have with my husband, and we're now 8 years married. So mother-in-laws, I feel the first thing I would like to share is that you have to see them as potentially like your mother. If you cannot see them like your mother, you are already brewing some trouble.
You know, whilst we were speaking, what comes to mind is that, and again, you know, let me have your views on this. Does a mother-in-law, does it give you an insight into like your future, you know, an insight into the partner? For instance, my mother-in-law, when I met her, I was almost certain that my wife, my future wife, would have some of these qualities.
Definitely, because she's coming from that family. And, you know, even when you haven't lived a lot with your mother, like when I was growing up, I didn't really live a lot with my mom. I spent a lot more time in boarding schools, as quite a lot of us did in when we were younger, and we were growing up in Nigeria or an African country. If you had, you know, the means, that was what was considered the best education. And I remember I went to boarding school from the age of ridiculously young. You know, this kind of young, before I turned into double digits. Double digits meaning from before age 11. So, but I know now in my adulthood that I have a lot of traits of my mom. And I'm like, how is that possible? I didn't even live with that. Although as we grew up, we became, because my mom had me when she was about 21. So we were almost like sisters at some point before she passed away. So just because you haven't lived with your mom, just to debunk that myth with some people, I can never be, there's some traits in our parents that we don't want, and we will be intentional and deliberate not to go down that road. But there's just some family traits that you pick up. There's so many. Sometimes I look at myself, how possible? So yes, it's a very good reason to get to know your prospective mother-in-law, or in any relationship, the extended family of that person.
So if now let's look at the exact opposite of that view. If the mother-in-law happens to be not nice, let me just simplify it.
Yeah.
How does one navigate that situation? The mother-in-law is just not nice at all.
The first thing I'll say is, was the mother-in-law part of the decision-making process when you got married? Because...
Let's divide it into two now. Before they got married and
after.
And after.
Okay, let's just say they've already married.
Okay.
We don't know whether they got to know themselves or not. Mm-hmm. Maybe they knew that the mother-in-law wasn't too hot on like you said, not very nice. It's going to be a challenge throughout the relationship, a big one. Because I one of the other podcasts that we did about, should you marry somebody if the mom and dad and the extended family are not in agreement? No, don't do it. There's no point. You can try.
But what
it will last.
The person is in love.
I know now. We've talked about this before. I was in love too. Very in love. Me and my ex, we said our love will conquer all.
What was that song you played at
The Power of Love, by Luther Vandross. You know the one, but I don't want to sing it just for copyright reasons. We'll go and play it. It is definitely going to be an uphill struggle, but that is not to say that you can't win your mother-in-law over. Because at the end of the day, once children are involved, which is usually a potential softening for the mother-in-law, potential, not always, because most mother-in-laws, they like being grandmothers. They like the idea of having access to their grandchildren. So if your mother-in-law, in your opinion, is not a very nice person, or doesn't treat you well, or in some of our cultural expectations, if you're coming from like where we're from, like a Yoruba background, there's certainly a lot of expectations of daughter-in-laws. Certainly that was my experience. There was a lot of expectations of me that I wasn't always in agreement with.
But this is where the partner, the male, the man in this instance, would have to tell the mother that, listen, this is how we roll. This is the boundary. There has to be a boundary.
Yes.
Yeah, she's my mother. She's your mother-in-law, but there has to be a boundary.
Yes. And the man has to step up to that. If it happens to be that it's the man's mother that's the in-law to the woman, because it could be in-laws on both sides. But yes, you're right. The man has to be the one that will step in to support the woman if the mother-in-law is being unreasonable, especially in diaspora. Usually we have this situation where, if it's possible and the people of means, they'll fly their mother over to come and support when they have a child. You understand what I mean? And both mothers can play that role. But what if you have a mother that comes over to support you but is not really being supportive? That happens as well. What happens? What happens in that situation? So again, it's about navigating relationship. There's a very good story of Ruth and Naomi in the biblical tradition, that this was a strong bond, so much that when the husband had passed away, the daughter-in-law said, I'll go with you, my mother-in-law, wherever you are going, I'm going. That's a beautiful thing. And as a result of that beautiful relationship, she acquired another husband in her mother-in-law's town. So mother-in-law play a very crucial role, and traditionally they're meant to support and use their experience to support the couple. It's actually meant to be something supportive.
Definitely.
And this is why you have to check out the kind of background the person is coming from. If they have mother-in-laws or figures like mother-in-laws, there are some relationships like it's so beautiful and sweet. Like my mother-in-law now, okay, she's not based in the UK, and we do have some language barriers. But anytime I call her, she's just laughing.
That's joy.
She's just laughing. Yeah. And I would also say, don't assume that that relationship won't ever work out. Just to go back to your question, that what if the mother-in-law is not nice? Because she's also coming from some baggage situation potentially. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, but there's some mother-in-laws that play the role of a policewoman. She wants to see and to ensure that because they're so attached to the son, she wants to see the quality of the wife, the quality of the wife to my son, and to see, okay, how does she cook for my son? That interference is what mother-in-laws, especially the younger ones that are coming up now, those in my age group, should avoid. As you rightly said, the role is to support.
Yes, not to take over.
And not to take over. Not to take over. Is to support and share your experiences, your rich experiences.
Yes. And understand that it's different now. So if you're a mother-in-law, because also some people who are mother-in-laws could be watching this.
Yeah.
Your daughter-in-law might not be doing things the way you did it.
Correct.
In fact, you might have a daughter-in-law that can't even cook.
And the husband is the one that cooks.
Of course.
You just imagine in our setting.
Oh, yes.
How irritating that would be to the mother-in-law.
I mean, we're talking about mother-in-law as in the mother of the husband at the moment, just to be clear, because we should do both sides, just to be fair. The tendency, certainly from our traditional African background, particularly the one we know, which is a Nigerian one, there's an expectation that the wife must, not even should, must be able to cook and must be able to cook to feed her husband. So if the husband is the one that's cooking and the mother-in-law comes to your house and says, it's not unusual for them to call you into the corner, which is in the corner. Excuse me.
Yes,
what is happening here?
What's happening here? Yeah.
Have you had that situation before? Please let us know what is happening. I mean, in my first marriage, my husband couldn't cook. He was the only son there were four of them. And fortunately, I could cook. I didn't see the big deal. But when you are in the marriage, and the expectation is for you to cook, and the expectation is for you to cook fresh food every day in diaspora, it's hard work. And then when your mother-in-law comes, the expectation is you will cook for them too, because they're elders. So you have to factor that kind of relationship management in. Have you got the stamina? Do you like to do these things? Is it within, because some women, they don't have issue with that. They feel it's their role to cook, to clean, to do all those things. But in reality, each person should do what they're good at. And the role of the mother-in-law is to support them in however they want to live their household. If you are unfortunate enough not to, you have one that's very interfering, has a mindset of how things should roll, then you need the support of your husband.
Definitely.
To be able to say, this is how we're rolling in our house. Of course, there will be a lot of dialogue. How could you do this? I'm your mother. I brought you into this world. I was pregnant for 9 months.
Pulling the emotional strings.
Exactly. It's called emotional blackmail, my people.
And we're saying before you get to this position, as you rightly said, get to know your mother-in-law.
Please,
get to know the views.
please. It's really important. In my first relationship, I tried to be close with my mother-in-law, but I knew that there were some ways that I had that she wasn't really too happy with. And I would ask her, "Oh, mommy, is there something that you're not happy about?" And she said, "Yeah, okay, but you need to change in some areas." But I also had to be true to myself, because there were certain things that were difficult for me, because I'm not a traditionalist by nature.
Yeah.
You know, when I say traditionalist, I believe that there are certain aspects of our tradition and culture that puts undue pressure on both parties, both male and female, that now manifests in bringing us into a situation where we potentially might have mental health issues later on, potentially might become very hard to our children, you know. So we need to take separate, you know, this is now the 21st century, and there was a good reason why there was so much expectation on women, because they didn't go outside of their home to work back in the day, and the male privilege was very much part of our culture, where men had more resources, more and everything.
So that is mother-in-law for the man, as the husband's or the male partner's mother-in-law.
Yes.
What about switching the role now? The mother-in-law for the lady, for
okay, so
our wife.
It's my mom.
Your mom.
And my husband's. Similarly, there has to be respect for my husband from my mother, because sometimes mothers, usually they can be quite close to their daughters, or not, as the case may be, but let's just say they're very close. It must not be to isolate your husband, because there are some mother-in-laws, they want that affinity with their daughter to the detriment of their husband. In fact, some mother-in-laws, they want to connive with their daughters to extort money, resources. I'm telling you, drop your comments in the chat if you have experienced something like that.
Yeah.
To just make the man the meal tickets. Meal tickets for their lifestyle.
Or there could be instances where, like, the mother-in-law has certain expectations of the son-in-law.
Of course, that's part of it. You drop money, you make sure that the daughter is well, fed, and you make sure that you extend your funds to all her extended family.
Wow. And
that's one of the things you have to check out before you marry, because you might be the meal ticket for the whole family, the ones in the village, the ones back home. There's so many expectations. Why? Because you are in diaspora and you marry their daughter. Where's the support, my peoples?
Wow. I'm thinking the mother-in-law, another way of checking out your mother-in-law, looking at your mother-in-law, what your mother-in-law is made of, is by looking at how the mother-in-law relates to, if the mother-in-law has other children, how does she relate with the family, with the in-laws?
Yes, of the others.
Yes. The others. And if the mother-in-law happens to be, I'll have only one child, again.
Yeah. The fewer the children they have, and especially if it's a male child, the more expectations of you. Because literally they want what is best for their child, and rightly so. And in our generation, we're a little bit, middle-aged, we're in our 50s and 60s. Back in the day, they valued a boy child more than a girl child, unfortunately. And so if you marry their son, the expectation is much higher. So these are things to work on. And let's talk about how you can win them over, because you might already be in that situation. There's nothing to do about it. You just have to manage. Their children involved who need access to their grandparents. if the grandparents want to have access to them, you know, we have to manage those relationships. And as much as possible, you and your partner need to be on the same page. If you are not on the same page, that's the first thing you need to work towards.
Yeah.
You both need to sit down and say, okay, how about our parents? How do you feel about my mom? How do I feel about your mom? And be honest, and you know, don't be shy to say, actually, she spends too much time in our house, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Talking about for a newly wedded couple who's just had a baby, and the mother-in-law either well, should I say any well, it could be the mother-in-law to the husband, or mother-in-law to the wife. What do you think is the reasonable time for the mother-in-law to spend in that new relationship, in that new home?
Well, is it to come and look after baby? Because that's the only reason. When you've just married, you don't need any in-laws in your house.
Come and look after baby.
Okay. Because once you're newlywed, I also have situations where quite recently one of my cousins got married, and she was flabbergasted when she moved into her husband's house. There were all these sisters that were already living there, and they planned to continue to live there. So please, my peoples, newlyweds, give them space, please. Give them space, at least a year. Let them get to know themselves. Let them find out how they want to move, and then they can call you if they need your help.
Yeah.
That's your role. But if there's a baby involved, and especially the traditions, not just tradition, it's helpful as well. Your parents want to come to support. You need to decide whether you want that. In my case, when I had my son, I had no mother-in-law, no mother there. You understand? My mom said, I've had my own child. You take care of your own. That was what my own mother said to me. So that one was out of the window. And unfortunately for me, I spent like 3 weeks in hospital because I had some challenges, you know. So the people who were there for me were not even my immediate family. They were my church family. So the help is why the mother comes. And the idea why it's a mother usually is so that they can share their wisdom and knowledge based on the fact that they've had child before. And to support. So, but to answer your question, how long should they? As long as the daughter finds them supportive. If they are not supportive, let them be shipped back ASAP. Because sometimes a mother-in-law comes, you are the one that will end up cooking, cleaning for them, and then you say, "Hang on here." They'll hold the baby for you while you go and cook.
True. Very true.
So their role is just to play with the child, and you do all the things that would support you to have your strength, to not be flustered. So that one is depending on how long you feel they're helpful. Maybe you just need to see how it goes.
Very well said. Very well said. I think without overflogging the topic, I would just suggest that get to know your mother-in-law.
Or your prospective mother.
Yeah.
Just generally your partner's family network. And if there's some runaway person, because there's some prodigals who said, no, don't worry about my family. It's just me and you, baby. I say, take your Gucci shoe and run. Gucci shoe and handbag if you're a girl. And your wallet.
But why?
Because they're already going to give you stress. If they run away from their own family, they're going to run away from you. Let me have your thoughts. But, well, actually, to be more fair, what I'm trying to say is there's already an unhealthy relationship going on there. Yeah. So stay with them. Let them try and reconnect with their family. You know, because it's not going to work. Eventually, you're going to have children. The parents are going to come back on the scene.
I think what we're trying to say is that it is important. You cannot overemphasize the role of a mother-in-law and the importance of a mother-in-law. If you treat your mother-in-law as your mother, as you will treat your mother,
it will be better. Healthy, And if they don't like you, for whatever reason, you're already in it, one of the ways of winning them over is trying to think about them. Do what you would do for your own mom. If you're buying present for your mom, buy for them. If you're, whatever you would do for your own mom, because they are like your mom. You've acquired them through the son or daughter that you've married into. And if you love that their daughter or son, you have to love them. There's this saying, love me, love my dog. The dog is not always nice.
Yes.
And I'm not calling your mother-in-law. It's just a saying. Your mother-in-law, you have to try and get along. That's part of the new setting. And there's been many mother-in-laws that have been won over. And there's some beautiful mother-in-laws. As soon as you are married into that family, they take you like their daughter. Mother-in-laws, take your daughter-in-laws like a daughter. Don't discriminate. Because what you don't want for your daughter, don't dish out to that daughter. Because I also know of people like that who dish out what they would give the best to their own daughters and dish out the worst to somebody else's daughter. Let's not be that kind of mother-in-law.
And if you suppress the daughter in this instance, you're indirectly suppressing your son.
Exactly. I had one gentleman that said, it's very simple. If my mother-in-law don't treat me well with respect and dignity, her daughter will suffer.
Oh my God.
So if you don't want your daughter to suffer at the hands of her husband, treat the husband well, my peoples.
Yewande, well done, well said.
Let's have your experience and your experience.
Yeah. Good stuff. See you next time.
Yes.
Don't forget to share and subscribe and like.
Yes.
And I'm sure you come back for more. Definitely.
Yes. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. See you next time.
And thank you for listening.
Bye for now.